All right, we are live. Welcome to this school community, the Former Athlete Society. We are finally jumping back into our Performance University Lesson 3. This is our master class. We do these once a month, and I'm excited to be jumping in and doing this with you today. As always, my name's Adam Ringler, and you should know that at this rate, if you're watching this, if not, if for whatever reason this is published online via YouTube or elsewhere, then I host these monthly. These are a deeper dive. It's a master class jumping into some conversational topics surrounding everything that an athlete needs to know to be successful post-collegiate career. I try to conduct these. I'm jumping into our slide, our presentation here. I try to conduct these every month, right? We have our Tuesday accountability call. We have our Thursday question and answer call. But these guys are essentially, this is our opportunity to dive deep into a topic. And so today we're going to be once again working around the wheel of our performance continuum. So without further ado, I want to jump into it and kind of discuss a little bit of what that looks like. So this is our wheel. We on a monthly basis, sometimes like last month, again on this, right? We are, wait a minute, your screen sharing is pause. Why is it pause? Resume. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate some technical difficulties because I don't want to get all the way through here and then find out that for whatever reason, the video is not working. How do I do this? Let's try this. Maybe I'll stop share. All right, we'll redo it again. So if this is a little wonky, it is what it is, right? That's how, doing things live ends up doing. So let's go to here. We're going to screen share. We're going to go Safari, share, and click to exit full screen. Cool. No. What is happening? All right. So here we are. So this is, like I said, I'm moving ahead. This is our Performance University Lesson 3. And once a month, we do these so that we can dive in deeper into a topic than what we otherwise have done. I've done two of these already, one of which is on the Former Athlete Society onboarding. You have free access to that. That is level one. As you just joined the team, you're walk on under our Former Athlete Society team, you get access to that material. You unlock the second lesson 2, Performance University Lesson 2. When you complete the onboarding, you'll get another access to essentially another 60-minute lecture, much like lesson 1. Then last month, we discovered Atomic Habits. I talked about all of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and broke it out completely for you in that masterclass. And that is located already on the classroom section of our school community, skool.com/former athlete. You can also navigate to any of my bios at Adam Ringler, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, elsewhere. You can find it there. I have links to all of how to join. I also on YouTube, Adam Ringler. You can find my channel. I have all videos there. Some of them are unlisted because they're exclusively for the community, and other videos I've shared strategically visible for public consumption. So you can find it here. But without further ado, let's jump into essentially lesson 3. So as I do this, we're going to discuss all of these topics: fueling, body, mentality, or applied sports psychology, recovery, and training. We're going to kind of do a full cycle of educational content surrounding this. And I'm going to end up talking exclusively in our fueling section about proteins because I think it's that important. So often, a lot of the student athletes I work with have no conceptual understanding of how to consume enough protein throughout their day. This is something I talk with them all about. Our registered dietitian talks to them all about. And it's so critical to get this piece nailed down because without it, what ends up happening is we underconsume protein. Quite frankly, we don't make the gains that we want to make And as an aging athlete, as you are navigating from your collegiate career to your professional one, it is very, very challenging to continue to make the gains that you want to make if you cannot get your protein right. So just as an example, what are proteins? They are your basic amino acid building blocks to muscle, right? So these are your meats, your fish, your poultry, your nuts, your legumes, right? These are the basis of your building blocks. It's important for building muscle, maintaining your immune system, fueling your body and your brain. A concept that I stole from Athletes Performance. Now, Exos is less legs, the leaner. They used to say less legs, the better. And that's just a phrase that I like to teach or at least share with athletes in a way to allow them to better and to encourage athletes to choose lean proteins with less visible fat. So when you think of that, what protein sources have no legs? Well, I have two legs and I have four legs. I'll pause for a moment. I'll let the suspense build. No legs. Any ideas? Fish, right? Whitefish specifically are a really lean version of fish. Now, can you get fattier versions of fish like salmon that has lean fats and omega-3s? Sure, a little bit fattier fish. But you can also get lean sources of fish as well. Also, no legs. A little hack to this, eggs. Eggs have no legs. So egg whites are a very, very lean source of protein. Now, what has two legs? I already kind of maybe gave away the answer. Poultry, right? Turkey, chicken. That is traditionally is a really lean version of protein. Now, what has four legs? That would be your red meat. That would be your beef. That would be your pork. Now, I oftentimes have athletes that come from rural parts of the country that will say, Adam, coach, what about venison and deer? Like, okay, deer is a very lean meat, but for most cases, no legs, fish and eggs, two legs, poultry, four legs, beef and pork. That is the continuum from lean to a little fattier sources. Now, again, right? We have the fish, we have the eggs, we have the poultry, we have the turkey, we have the beef, we have the pork, right? These are all sources of animal protein. Now, a lot of the times and you've heard me already, I've said this, 1 gram of protein for every 1 pound of muscle, right? 1 gram for every 1 pound of muscle. And I have, like a 170-pound athlete would say, Adam, how do I get 170 grams? I have no idea how to fit that in. Well, again, you don't have to have gigantic, like sources of protein. You don't have to just eat all 170 grams at night or in the day or only two. Like if you break your day up, it's very easy to get 170 grams, 10 grams upon waking, 25 grams like at your real breakfast, or maybe a small snack that includes 10 more grams. Lunch, that's some protein, 25 grams. You practice, you go weights, maybe you have a post-workout shake for 40 grams. You have a pretty protein-rich dinner, another 40 grams. You have that, it says AM and there should be PM. 8 p.m., you have a small snack. Maybe at 10 p.m., you have another small snack. And that's 170 grams. That is really easy to kind of do. So what's that look like? Maybe Greek yogurt, scrambled eggs, beef jerky pack, chicken or meat. I say at Champs, but maybe a cafeteria or your workplace, an MRE replacement shake. I love True Nutrition. So TRUE nutrition.com. They make a Team Skip blend protein. That's amazing. That's a mixture of different proteins, but I love that blend of protein. Maybe a beef or pork or meat, with a double serving of meat to get that 40 grams at a cafeteria or when you come home from work, a beef jerky pack, maybe more hard-boiled eggs. And there you go. You have 170 grams right there. Now, another common question I often get is, how do I know if I'm on track for my protein intake? And what I would recommend is getting a protein or a nutrition or a macro tracker. So this is just a real viewpoint of one of my protein days, right? So I track everything. Woke up, had scrambled eggs in the morning. I had some beef jerky in the late morning. I had some whey protein in the late-ish morning, probably post-workout at that rate. And you could see on the third sort of screenshot, My calories was 2,073 calories of a 2,100 target. I was 96% on track for that. Had 200, almost 280 of 280. So I hit my protein, overshot my fats. I did 66 grams for what should have been 50. And my carbs, I was a little undershot that day. So you can see how if you track things, you can visualize it, you can manage it when you monitor it. And this, again, I've mentioned Peter Drucker several times on this, but what gets measured gets managed. And if you want to manage something, something so important as your protein intake, then we probably need to measure it somehow. So I end up using Macro Factor. I've used Carbon in the past. MyFitnessPal is another great example of a macro tracking app. Sorry, I'm just moving my microphone a little bit closer. I do also have music in the background, so I wish I could have my environment completely quiet. That's completely unrealistic considering my life and what I do. So this is the best I can do. Again, what is the advantage of having, six different fuel sources throughout the day versus just trying to get all 170 grams of protein at night? Well, if you've ever camped, I live in Colorado. So if you've ever gone camping, or you know that if you throw smaller chunks of wood on the fire, it keeps the fire going, it keeps the fire hotter, and it's easier to kind of digest that or to burn that wood up as you throw things in. That's your metabolism. So if you can throw six little individual meals, if you will, or feeding windows, if you will, versus just waiting to have one big meal at the end of the day or in the middle of the day, your metabolism can tends to stay hotter, it tends to stay going, right? It's more efficacious to continue to run. If you ever just chopped down or found a big ass log and you try to throw it on the fire, it doesn't do a really good job of actually keeping that thing stoked and keeping it hot. So that's one example of why I favor having more meals than having just one big gigantic meal. So moving on from here, I want to kind of end up talking a little bit about the body and what I mean by the body, right? Anything related to performance, your body, why it changes, why it does what it does, the amazing machinery that we have. And in this one, I wanted to talk specifically about why sleep is so important. So this next body segment is all about how sleep affects your performance and affects your body. We know this, sleep is crucial. And so much of my context of these slides is about basketball because that's the sport I love. That's the sport I work with so closely. If it's not your sport, this doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter that it's not. I'm not saying volleyball or I'm not saying softball or I'm not saying baseball or football. It's sport agnostic. These principles, these lessons apply whether I'm talking about basketball or football or any other sport. But sleep is crucial for athletes. It allows your body to repair muscle tissues, replenish energy storage, optimize cognitive functions like your focus and your reaction time. Adequate sleep actually helps athletes fully recover. It helps muscle healing from intense training sessions and games. And it also reduces the risk of fatigue-related injuries and poor performance. So often we see sleep get compromised with new parents, with athletes that are staying up late, still trying to manage their academics, with all of us in the working world that have job responsibilities and deliverables that we have to turn in on time. Sleep often gets put on the back burner. So your body and sleep, without sufficient sleep, reaction times are slower, decision making suffers, endurance declines. All of these things can have a negative impact on the performance on the court, the pitch, the soccer field, the baseball diamond, the softball diamond, your competitive arena. Your reaction time slow, your decision making suffers, and endurance decline. Now, I want to talk about Sherry Ma, Dr. Sherry Ma. She is a sleep researcher. She also works with academics. She's out of the Bay Area, or at least was. She was either a PhD at Stanford, but she's wrote a number of different papers, the effects of sleep extension on athlete performance and collegiate basketball players. This was Stanford study that she did. Um, and in this research paper, she ends up doing some research studies on Stanford men's and women's basketball. Collectively, with her study, She ended up saying they took almost a full second off their times in a 282-foot sprint on a basketball court. This is athletes that actually sufficiently extended their sleep. That's equivalent to a length of a court 3 times. They also improved the accuracy of both their free throw and 3-point shooting by 9%. Athletes that got enough sleep had those things or improved their sleep. Athletes that didn't improve their sleep actually saw a detriment to these things. Their endurance suffered, the accuracy of the free throw suffered, and the 3-point shooting also suffered. And what these findings suggest is that these athletes were operating at a suboptimal level. They accumulated a sleep debt. Said Ma, it's not that they couldn't function, they were doing just fine, but they might not have ever been at their full potential. She's also worked with several of the professional sports teams in the Bay Area. This is another example of athletes that, when getting 8 hours of sleep versus not, found that the free throw percentage has gone up, points per minute has gone up, fouls per game has decreased, which is good. Turnovers per game also decreased. All very positive performance metrics for those four. In addition to that, when you are underslept or you accumulate a bunch of sleep debt, irritability sets in, cognitive impairment, right? Impaired moral judgment. You have, in extreme cases, like we're talking 2 days, 3 days, hallucinations, similar symptoms, like in lieu of like ADHD type of symptomology, impaired immune function, risk of diabetes. Uh, but again, on the right side, heart rate variability tends to increase, risk of heart rate, reaction times, like if you were to think increase rather than decrease accuracy. There's so many negative effects that actually happens just by simply not getting enough sleep. So I'm asking you, really try to dive in deep to getting enough quality REM or deep sleep cycles. If you're not already using an Oura Ring or a Whoop device, I wear a Whoop device on my right hand, Apple Watch on my left, because I want to monitor my recovery, my deep and REM cycle sleep. So if you're not monitoring that, I would highly, highly advise you to get a device because, as I said in the last one, the fueling section, what gets monitored gets measured. So if you can monitor your deep sleep and your REM sleep and your total sleep and the sleep debt accumulation, you could probably manage it. And it is either in sleep extension, right? So whether you go to bed earlier or whether you wake up later, whether you're trying to optimize your sleep hygiene so you get deeper and better sleep, all of those are strategies to improve your sleep quality, but also ways that you can look at mitigating maybe your environment or your scheduling to allow you to actually have sleep extension, the duration of your sleep as well. Now, this section, the applied sports psychology section, or mentality, if you will, I want to end up talking about this cool doctor, Dr. Carol Dweck. And she's a renowned psychologist, professor at Stanford University, another Stanford grad or, employee, if you will, best known for her groundbreaking research on mindset, motivation, personality, personal development. And she has done a number of different things. And most of her research exists around education and this thought process of a growth versus fixed mindset. That the idea of that abilities can be developed through dedication, hard work, those things. And she has just published paper after paper. She's authored numerous different scholarly articles. She's wrote a New York Times bestseller book. It's actually sitting in my desk. Her research has earned her global praise and recognition. She is a utter badass. But this is the book I want to talk about, Mindset. And in this book, right, and listen, I'm not going to do the whole book justice by just trying to say a Cliff Note version of it, but this is what, these lessons are about, really giving us, a little bit deeper dives into things other than what we would do on a normal Tuesday accountability call or a Q&A call. But what she has talked about is this growth versus fixed mindset thought process. And so what is a mindset? How do we even that? Growth mindset is typically belief that abilities can improve with effort. And a fixed mindset is generally beliefs that your abilities are static and unchangeable. So on the left-hand side is fixed, on the right-hand side is growth, and just some commonalities when you start thinking like generalizations. On the left, I'll never be that smart. I want to avoid making mistakes. This is good enough. I give up. I know best. I'll never be able to improve that. This is how I was. This is how I was born. That's, like that. That's the ideology of fixed mindset. On the right is embracing change. I want to go to practice. I want to learn. I'm going to make mistakes. The mistakes help me learn. Feedback from a coach or a mentor is valuable. I don't know if this is my best work, but I'm going to try. I won't give up. I'll keep trying. A belief that the longer and harder that you work at something, the more and more that you'll grow and you'll get better at it. So ultimately, what Dr. Dweck was talking about is that the key to growth is simply effort. That effort is the key to getting better. Talent can get you started, but effort ends up leading to mastery. And challenges and failures are simply just an opportunity for you to grow. So, like again, breaking this slide down into a more of a simplistic way is this part that a lot of the times athletes that come in very talented look at effort. Like, I don't want to give effort, man. That's something that's unnecessary. That's what people who aren't good at sport does. They give effort, right? If you're as good as me, you don't have to give effort. Like, everything about me comes effortless, right? That is a very fixed way of looking at things. But really, great athletes, the ones that are also talented, come in and say, man, effort is essential. It's the path to mastery. I have to give effort. That's the way I'm going to get better and better and better. So feedback is fuel. We got to think about the coaching feedback that you receive as feedback that helps you grow and get better. Generally, those with fixed mindsets tend to feel like, man, this is criticism about something I do that I'm doing. Where those that have a growth mindset look at it and say, man, this is a gift. This coach or this person is giving me a gift because it's allowing me to see something I might not normally see. And that's an opportunity to get better. So in this growth versus fixed mindset, it's really criticism versus feedback. A lot of times people are like, oh man, the coach is picking on me, or the coach thinks I'm bad at this, or man, I feel embarrassed because coach pointed out a flaw that I have. Like, I'll never be able to be as good as what coach wants. But a different mentality of way of thinking about that is your coach cares about you by giving you feedback. This person cares about me because they're trying to help me become a better version of me. This person must believe in me, or he or she wouldn't bother painting out how I can improve. I'm thankful, right? Isn't that a mind switch? I'm thankful that coach is telling me this and giving me a recipe of how I can get better and improve. And I'll try to do some of the things that coach suggests. Another thing about this is that in her books, she establishes that persistence pays off. So bouncing back from failure. Failure isn't a stopping point, it's just a lesson. It's just feedback, and feedback is the vehicle for growth. And that grit and perseverance builds champions. And so what's cool is I look at this picture, and this is a team, this during the Super Bowl, they end up losing and they're just taking it all in. Like, they could look at this and be like, damn, we suck, we're not good, whatever. Or you could sit there and revel in the moment of being so close to a championship and think and strategize, what can we do to get better? What can we do to learn from this? How can we learn from our mistakes? Which brings me to Angela Duckworth, who wrote an incredible book all on that perseverance during tough times and how to get better, the power of passion, right? And so in her book, one of the things that she ends up sharing is that one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success, and it was grit. Grit is passion, it's perseverance during long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future every single day, day in, day out, not just for a week, not just for a month, but for years, working hard to make something a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon and not a sprint. Phenomenal book. So, the last thing on this I want to leave us with is that we get to choose our mindset every day. We get to stare in that mirror and choose how we want to operate during the day. You get to choose whether you want to approach the day with a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. But I can guarantee you, choosing a growth mindset leads to long-term success. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk a little bit about recovery and recovery research. So this is a phenomenal book. She actually came to our campus several years ago and presented. But what Christy wrote was this, again, I think it was a New York Times bestseller, Good to Go. And what it is it's a summary. It's all of our research that exists around different recovery modalities and what actually is true, what actually has merit, what has peer-reviewed evidence that actually affects positively recovery. So she is a award-winning author, journalist, podcaster, public speaker, New York Times bestseller author. She's a host and producer of a podcast called Uncertain. It's all covered about uncertainty in science. She's also a co-host of Emerging Forum, a podcast about the creative process. Again, much like Dr. Carol Dweck, she is a badass. She contributes to the New York Times, to Runner's World, and to Bicycling Magazine, a number of different publications. So she is well read and well published. And in her book, she talks about recovery is about stress mitigation and management. The notion of recovery involves both body and mind and stress of all kinds, physical, mental, emotional. All of that stress hurts recovery of both mind and body. Another thing in it, and this is just a summary of her book and sort of in my notes, that sleep really matters, positively and negatively. Sleep is especially important to recovery, and so is relaxation. So if an athlete's recovery routine is itself a source of stress, it's counterproductive. So what do I mean by that? If you're going through your day thinking, "Oh my goodness, my Whoop sleep score says I'm not sleeping enough, and I need to make time to have my recovery routine, and I can't do it," that stress of worrying about your sleep and your recovery routine is actually harming you. So it's okay to have those things, but let's relax when we have those things. Let's not stress over having those things because that stress is also a form of anti-recovery. Now, adequate fueling also impacts your recovery. So under eating is bad and is really worse than eating non-optimally. So a lot of the times where it's like, oh my goodness, I only eat vegan, I only eat organic. And if it's not organic, I'm not eating at all. That's a poor strategy, right? You need to eat something. So she is saying that under eating is actually worse than eating something that is suboptimal. So that's really important for us. Fueling for performance. So she ends up talking about, and we hear this a lot about the anabolic window. And I might, as a strength coach, I might have even talked a lot about the anabolic window on our last Q&A call. But the timing of food in her research, the food intake is unimportant unless you have a really short break between events. So if you finish an event and you have another one in a few hours, eating the right thing at the right time is so critical, right? I was a wrestler. Eating the right thing from morning weigh-ins to your match, maybe several hours later, a few hours later, super critical. But if you aren't competing again for 24 hours or more, then there's no real nutrition window. It's what she would say is more of like a nutrition barn door. Just get it in, right? You don't have to worry about fitting it in through a narrow crack or a window. It's a barn door. Just get the right nutrients in your body. Sleep, relaxation, fueling. Other than getting enough sleep and enough relaxation and eating the proteins and enough carbohydrates to replenish glycogen supplies and calories, nearly nothing else, peer reviewed, is definitively known to be more beneficial compared to just living an ordinary life between events. No Normatex, no cryo, no hydration, just get enough sleep, enough relaxation, eat the right things, get your calories in, and that is about the basis of what you need to do. One other thing that she also talks about is overtraining is really real. So overtraining is a real thing, both physically and mental components, and overtraining can be worse than undertraining. So when in doubt, come in a little underprepared, a little bit more undertrained, because overtraining has more nefarious effects than undertraining. So ultimately, what this book generally summarizes is that the jury is really still out. as far as specific recovery modalities. Massage might or might not help. Ice baths might or might not help. Various food supplements might or might not help. Heat in some forms might or might not help. Ibuprofen and other anti-inflammatories probably do a little physical harm in most people, but most athletes refuse to believe it. Stretching probably doesn't help most people. All of these things, when actually done scientifically, don't have a lot of merit to what they're at least stouting. Different strokes for different folks. Why do I put this up there? Because what works for you might not work for me, and what works for me might not work for you. So different things work differently for different people. So following the same recovery routines as LeBron James or Tom Brady might not work for you, right? You're not LeBron James, you're not Tom Brady. And lastly, placebo effect is a real effect. We can't rule that out. Some recovery methods, uh, and quite frankly, maybe a lot of them actually really do help some people simply due to the placebo effect. And there's nothing wrong with that. If it helps, it helps. Hell, like as if it's not making you worse, but it actually does help you, then keep rocking and rolling with it. But again, it might not be very scientifically supported. So let's go into the last thing, and this might be a wild tangent for those in the former athlete society. Sorry, I'm adjusting my camera a little bit. In that training, I want to talk about training, and what I want to talk about is relative peak power. So whether you go to a gym or you've been in a training facility that might utilize force plates. I use force plates on a daily basis with the athletes I work with. One of the metrics we often communicate with sports medicine, with scouts, with athlete themselves and the coaches is relative peak power. So what is relative peak power? Well, first we got to talk about what power is, right? So power is simply when we look at these things, right? And we talk about a counter movement jump. This is your hands on your hips. You stand on some force plates. You load up or you load into a unweighing phase. This is the eccentric portion of a jump where you load, you flex your knees and your hips and your ankles, and you come down into a loaded spring-like position. You concentrically power up through triple extension through the hips, knees, and ankles. You leave the ground in the air, and when the orange line is flatlined on the bottom of the plot, and then you land with a violent force reaction, and you kind of go into your stabilization phase, right? So start of the movement, you start of your braking, you start your decel, you go all the way down, you're starting to, start of your concentric phase at the very peak takeoff force. You leave the ground. That's the takeoff point where the force drops below 20 newtons. You have this gigantic peak landing force on the right side of the plot, highest force registered during the landing phase. And then, yeah, that's essentially what this looks like. Now, what is peak power? It refers to the maximal amount of power produced by an individual during the concentric phase of the counter movement jump. And it's typically calculated by the highest instantaneous value of force multiplied by velocity at that specific movement. So it represents the highest rate of energy production during the jump. Now, the word relative makes it really important for us, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. But relative peak power in a counter movement jump on force plates refers to the maximum power an athlete can generate during the jump, calculated as the peak force produced divided by the athlete's body weight. And why that is important is because it essentially shows how much power they can produce per kilogram of body mass during the explosive phase of the jump. I don't know why I said kilogram that way, but produce per kilogram. So it allows us to do this. It allows us to take a very non-homogeneous group, heights, size, structures, shapes, weights, all that, and apples and oranges and whatever other fruits in this analogy, and allows us to sort them and be able to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, right? And so we can now compare things and look at things relative to their pound for pound or kilogram per kilogram basis. And it allows for us to have a more accurate comparison between people and athletes of different structures and sizes as it takes into the athlete's individual mass by dividing their peak power generated by their body weight. So the anthropometric aspects of an athlete, it allows us to kind of scale for that, provides a better understanding of their peak output relative to their size. And I put this slide up here is because of the times I've had to communicate with agents, with scouts, with people, every single one of them has asked about relative peak power. It is that crucial in those conversations. Oh, and there's my last presentation slide. So, uh, like I said, it is so critical to talk about those things. Now, let me stop my screen share. Let me go just back to me. So we talked a little bit about, whoa, there I am. We talked about fueling. We talked about proteins. We talked about the body and specifically how sleep impacts an athlete's body. We talked about how applied sports psychology and the growth mindset and why it's important to adopt a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset and some strategies to navigate accepting feedback. I talked about why it's important to really understand the recovery modalities that we use and what actually has scientific basis to it. And then lastly, right there, we ended up talking about, essentially relative peak power and why training for power is so critically important and why it's important to look at relative strengths, not always just absolute strengths. And I ultimately just want to say that is our presentation. That's our deep dive for this month, diving in one cycle through that performance wheel, touching everything from fueling to body to psychology to recovery to training. I hope you took something away from this. And if you did, this is my pitch to you. I run our former athlete society, despite the logo being backwards. I still need to fix this on this MacBook. Despite the logos being backwards, I run the former athlete society. It is specifically a school, SKOOL.com community that allows me to share this information to you. And it is exclusively just for former college athletes. So if that's you and you're like, hey, Adam, I'm a former athlete, but I want to get my body back to how I was during college. This school community is specifically for you. I've dedicated it. I designed it. I've curated it. It is only for college athletes or former college athletes that's exhausted their eligibility that want to reclaim the body and their performance that they had during their playing days, now well into their professional days. So if that sounds like you, is a free community for the first 10 community members. I think we're at like 8 or 9 right now. So if you jump in and you join for free, join right now, you will have it forever free. You will never get charged for this school community. Now, after we get to 10 community members, it's a paid subscription model. So it would behoove you to jump in right now, as long as we're under 10, to join free immediately and get in before the price begins to go up. And there's a monthly subscription attached to it. So head over to SKOOL.com/former athlete. You can also go to adamringler.com/school, SKOOL, and you can learn more about it there. I have a whole description of what you get, what the offerings are, what the calls are, the community, the content, the classroom, the leaderboard, how you can win free strength conditioning programming from me to you. You get it for free. So not only do you get the community for free, you get the programming for free, you get the education for free, you get the Q&A calls for free, you get the master classes for free. All of this is delivered to you during this medium. And all you have to do is just sign up for it. So if that sounds intriguing, if that sounds enticing, if that sounds like something you want, head over to school.com, sign up today. I'd love to see you in there. I'd love to start working with you and help you reclaim the body that you once had. I appreciate you as always. Until next time, take care.